Greetings class from the Pacific Northwest. I'm Cathy and my presentation today for our Communications 532 class is on Chapter 20, Telephony. Change slides. Ideas for remote communication started back in the late 1800s and by the early 1930s had progressed to the beginning of AT&T. According to our text by Grant and Meadows, during the early years of development, competitive innovation, government control, and corporations and cultural heritage pushed inventors like Alexander Graham Bell to create his vision for communication, thus the telegraph. Eventually, technology advancements connected us through an analog exchange, so switchboards could connect, disconnect, and rapidly switch people to reach who they were calling. I remember where I grew up, we had a party line. The idea was only use the phone for emergencies. Also, neighbors could listen in on conversations, not very private, and as a preteen I needed to talk on the phone. Change slides. Over 100 years' time, telephony evolved to numbers being saved in computers' memories known as storage program controls, or SPCs. Thus, switching became centralized in a distributed control system, increasing the number of calls because of a digital microprocessing system. By the 1950s, we had a cattle rancher down in Texas by the name of Thomas Carter create out of necessity a two-way radio attachment that used AT&T lines to communicate with his ranch hands and workers on his oil rigs off the coast of Texas. Eventually, in the 1970s, Motorola developed the brick cell phone. On a personal note, in the early 90s, a couple months after we were married, my husband was overseas with his command in the Marine Corps, and a good friend of ours handed him a brick phone before he left, so he could call me anytime he wanted, any time of day. The brick was then donated to the Red Cross in San Diego to help with their disaster relief missions. Remember, we did not have email, cell phones, or video chat, so handwritten letters took about 3 weeks to go one way between us. A landline phone call could cost us thousands of dollars for just a few minutes, and two-way radio, well, that wasn't even a viable option then. If you could imagine, the brick was a huge blessing for us in the 1990s. Change slides. Eventually, the land mobile phone was a precursor to the cellular revolution. Bell Telephone Labs engineers, the FCC engineers, and telecom engineers were all individually trying to create automobile phones or a handheld mobile phone for some type. Then Martin Cooper, an engineer, liked the communicators that were used in the early Star Trek shows on television and came up with the brick, dubbed so because it was at least 2 pounds. The only land mobile phones used a frequency broadcast over a broad area. So AT&T with Bell Telephone Labs started making a network of carefully spaced transmission centers, which Joseph Engel and Richard Frankel designed a map for. Change slides. A generation later, in the 1980s, the FCC engineers got involved and used a cellular map to continue creating transmission networks, which led to telecom engineers inventing smartphone technology around 1993 with the rollout of the IBM Simon phone. Over the next 2 decades, the smartphone as we know it was developed. Change slides. The smartphone is a stack of 4 technical layers to operate the device as we know how to today. To be usable, the phone requirements are an app, operating system, smartphone, and a cellular network. Change slides. During the 2 decades of evolution, it's important to note, after flip phones, the first business type of device, the BlackBerry. I remember my office managers getting them. However, they were so expensive for the rest of us. And despite all the struggles to try to stay in business, AT&T still offers the BlackBerry, and some business people do like to use them. Apple iPhones started being sold in 2007 for around $499. The iPhone was revolutionary, depending on an iOS operating system, including responsive web browser. The device itself allowed customers to use apps, tap tappable multifunction screens without hardware buttons or a stylus pen. Change slides. Since 2014, there are 3 main developments according to Grant and Meadows in our textbook: new apps, digital wear, and m-commerce. I'm sure today you'll know of many more developments in the last 5 years. Change slides. By 2020, there will be more mobile phone users worldwide than people who have electricity in their homes. This brings me to an interesting question for you later about our global mobile age. Change slides. Data reported by the statistics portal estimates 5 billion people using mobile phones by 2017. That leaves the big cell phone companies like AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile vying for everyone's business to take market share. Change slides. Interestingly, as a former manager with a telecommunications company, the millions of dollars they spent on the company I worked with for purchasing the network in Mexico, getting into television by purchasing DirecTV, and growing the network in emerging markets sets the stage and the groundwork for providing access for all the companies to enter different markets. Currently, there are still landlines, and I know this to be true because where I live, I have older people I know who still have the rented phone from AT&T on their walls. Landlines are already in the process of being retired. However, I think we're going to have them around for a longer time than the companies would like. Change slides. Some things to follow and watch besides new apps and devices that could affect your cellular abilities and costs would be what the government does through the FCC concerning privacy. Also, when our text was written in 2016, Grant and Meadows mentioned 5G was rolling out in the year 2020. Where I live, 5G digital access has already been added to the telephone poles, and I'm seeing that the Internet of Things and access using 5G has already started happening. Maybe you've experienced the same thing in your area. Concerning careers in telecommunications, well, I can attest there are amazing careers that can take you far. However, it takes a learning-based person to keep up and excel because changes are happening in the corporations and with technology almost monthly. My advice, start at the bottom and work your way into a position that suits your personality and your education. That takes about a year. Change slides. On another note, I have a passion for stopping cyberbullying. My niece, who's only 10, was being bullied through her YouTube channel and various other cyber technology she uses. She has suffered as a young girl, and teachers are not sure in the classroom how to handle the cyberbullying or what's happened to her because she's so different now. I have a biblical perspective I wanted to share with you, and I hope you enjoy and consider what I wrote on the slide. The Bible has a lot to say about bullying, and we are able to help our youth of today navigate the negativeness and not let it change who they are, or worse. I hope that's helpful to you too. Change slides. So back to the question. Here's your question, and I look forward to reading your responses. With regards to social financial exploration or biblical application, what do you feel are the effects of smartphones on emerging markets? Thank you for your time, and God bless.